Critical and literary analysis of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Traditionally, the art of war is credited to Sun Tzu. He is presented as a Chinese military general, strategist, philosopher, and writer who lived during the Eastern Zhou period, 771–256 BC. His birth name was Sun Wu, known as Master Sun, Sun Tzu. He is revered as a legendary historical and military figure in Chinese and East Asian culture. However, Sun Tzu's historicity is uncertain. The historian Sima Qian placed him as a minister to King Helu of Wu, dating his life between 544 and 496 BC. Traditional accounts state that he served King Helu of Wu around 512 BC, and his victories inspired him to write the work. Many modern scholars who accept his historical existence place the extant text of the work in the later Warring States period, 475–221 BC, based on the style and descriptions of warfare. Other Chinese scholars began to doubt Sun Tzu's historical existence around the 12th century AD, mainly because he is not mentioned in the historical classic Zhuozhuan. The name Sun Wu may have been a descriptive cognomen meaning the fugitive warrior. The only historical battle attributed to him, the Battle of Boju, has no record of his participation. Critics cite possible historical inaccuracies and anachronisms in the text. Terms, technology such as crossbows, philosophical ideas, events, military techniques that should not have been available to Sun Wu in his traditionally accepted time period. The lack of records of professional generals in the spring and autumn period, when Sun Tzu supposedly lived, also raises doubts. There are differing views on the date when The Art of War was written. The traditional view dates it to 512 BC, written by the historical Sun Wu. A second view places it during the Middle to Late Warring States period, c. 481–221 BC. A third school claims that the pieces were published in the last half of the 5th century BC, based on archaeological discoveries. Some scholars suggest that the book may have been a compilation of different authors and military strategists. Sun Bin, a descendant or student of Sun Wu who also wrote a military treatise and was an authority on military matters, may have been the inspiration for the historical figure of Sun Tzu. However, there are arguments that Sun Tzu probably existed and wrote the core of the book. Military strategy, according to Sun Tzu, is a comprehensive system that integrates careful planning, accurate intelligence, constant assessment of circumstances, including terrain and moods, effective leadership, flexible application of tactics based on deception and exploitation of weaknesses, all with the primary objective of achieving victory at the lowest possible cost, ideally subduing the enemy without the need for a bloody battle. Fundamental principles and strategy. Sun Tzu states that the art of war is of vital importance to the state, being a matter of life and death. War is governed by 5 constant factors that must be taken into account. The moral law makes the people be in complete agreement with their ruler. The sky signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. The earth comprises distances, danger and safety, terrain, and the chances of life and death. The commander represents wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and rigor, method and discipline, organization of the army, gradations of rank, maintenance of supply roads, control of military expenditure. He who knows these 5 factors will be victorious. Victory or defeat can be predicted by comparing 7 aspects of the opposing armies, including the moral law of the sovereigns, the skill of the generals, the advantages of heaven and earth, discipline, strength, training, and the application of reward and punishment. The general must listen to advice to win and be kept in command. He who does not listen will suffer defeat and must be dismissed. It is crucial to modify plans as circumstances favor. Deception and attack by stratagem. All warfare is based on deception. The skillful must appear incapable when they can attack, inactive when they use force, and manipulate the enemy's perception of distance. One must spread baits to attract the enemy and feign disorder to crush him. If the enemy is strong or secure, one must be prepared or flee. To irritate an angry opponent, to feign weakness to make him arrogant, to give him no rest, to separate his forces, and to attack where he is unprepared are important tactics. These devices which lead to victory should not be disclosed beforehand. The work emphasizes the importance of prior calculation. The general who wins makes many calculations while the one who loses makes few. The great aim in war should be victory, not long campaigns. A prolonged war exhausts the resources of the state, and there is no case of a country which has benefited from it. The skillful soldier collects food from the enemy to sustain the army and avoids the public poverty caused by contributions from afar. The supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. The highest form of command is to frustrate the enemy's plans, followed by preventing the gathering of enemy forces, attacking in the field, and last but not least, besieging walled cities. Sieges are costly and disastrous. The skillful leader subdues troops and captures cities and kingdoms without fighting or long operations, with his forces intact. This is the method of attack by stratagem. The numerical proportions dictate the actions. Encircle with 10-1, attack with 5-1, divide with 2-1, fight with 1-1, avoid with slight inferiority, and flee with great inequality. The general is the bulwark of the state. A ruler can bring misfortune to the army in 3 ways: by ordering impossible advance and retreat, lame the army; by ruling as a kingdom, causing unrest; and by employing officers without discrimination, shattering confidence. This leads to anarchy and destroys victory. There are 5 essential elements to victory: knowing when to fight and when not to fight, know how to deal with superior and inferior forces, have an army animated by the same spirit, be prepared and wait for the enemy unawares, have military capability without interference from the sovereign, know yourself and your enemy. A central principle is, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, you suffer defeat for every victory. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Tactical dispositions and energy. Good fighters place themselves beyond the possibility of defeat before seeking the opportunity to defeat the enemy. Security from defeat depends on oneself, but the opportunity to win is provided by the enemy. To be on the defensive indicates insufficient strength. To attack indicates an overabundance of strength. The general skilled in defense hides, while the one skilled in attack bursts from the heights. The intelligent fighter excels at winning easily, without making mistakes, conquering an enemy who has already been defeated. The victorious strategist seeks battle only after victory has been won. The military method involves measurement, estimation of numbers, calculation, balancing of chances and victory, all interrelated and based on knowledge of the terrain. Control of a large force follows the same principle as controlling a few. It is only a matter of division and the use of signals. The impact of the army should be like a stone thrown at an egg, affected by the knowledge of weak and strong points. The direct method enters the battle, but indirect methods ensure victory. Indirect tactics are inexhaustible. The combination of direct and indirect methods creates an endless series of maneuvers. Energy may be compared to the bending of a crossbow, and decision to the pulling of the trigger. In the chaos of battle, simulated order calls for perfect discipline, simulated fear calls for courage, simulated weakness calls for strength. The intelligent fighter seeks the effect of combined energy, not demanding too much from individuals, but choosing the right men to use this energy. An intelligent fighter imposes his will on the enemy. He can lure the enemy by offering advantages or make approach impossible by inflicting damage. He attacks the enemy's weak points in order to be irresistible. The art of subtlety and secrecy allows one to be invisible and inaudible, controlling the enemy's fate. To ensure security, one must hold only positions that cannot be attacked. Weakness in numbers comes from the need to prepare against many possible attacks, while strength in numbers comes from forcing the enemy to prepare against us at specific places and times. It is vital not to repeat the tactics that gave a victory, but to adapt methods to the infinite variety of circumstances. Military tactics are like water. They avoid what is strong and attack what is weak. molding themselves to the enemy. The work describes 6 types of terrain: accessible, tangled, temporary, narrow passes, steep heights, and distant. For each, there are recommended tactics, such as occupying high ground, avoiding certain actions, or using stratagems. The general should study these principles. Maneuvers and terrain. Tactical maneuver is difficult and involves turning the crooked into the straight and the wrong into the gain. Maneuvering with an undisciplined army is dangerous. Excessive forced marches lead to exhaustion and loss of men. An army without baggage, provisions, or supply bases is lost. It is essential to know the designs of one's neighbors in order to make alliances and to be familiar with the terrain, mountains, forests, marshes, etc., in order to lead an army. The Kwer. Use of local guides is necessary to take advantage of natural advantages. Practice stealth and move only for advantage. Swiftness should be that of the wind, compactness that of the forest. Plunder like fire, be immobile as a mountain. Dark plans, movement like lightning. Signals such as gongs, drums, standards, and flags are used to concentrate the senses of the army. A shrewd general studies the moods of his soldiers, attacking when they are lethargic. Maintaining self-control, calmly awaiting enemy disorder, and economizing forces by being well supplied when the enemy is not, are important arts. There are military axioms to follow, such as not advancing against a descending enemy, not pursuing a feigned escape, not attacking explosive soldiers, not falling for bait, not interfering with an army returning home, leaving a clear exit when encircling and not pressing desperate enemies. An army is exposed to 6 calamities due to the general's failures: escape, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, and defeat. These are not natural but result from mistakes in leadership, such as pitting inferior forces against superiors, having problems with discipline or weak authority, or acting rashly. The general must regard his soldiers as his children, treat them humanely but keep them under control with iron discipline. Indulgence without authority makes soldiers useless. Partial knowledge, knowing only about oneself or the enemy, or ignoring the terrain, leads only halfway to victory. The experienced soldier is never confused or lost. Knowing the enemy, himself, heaven, and earth, leads to complete victory. The 9 situations and the use of spies. The art of war recognizes 9 varieties of terrain, each requiring specific tactics. Dispersive, do not fight. Inspire unity. Easy, do not stop. Ensure connection between parties. Contentious, do not attack. Rush the rear, open. Do not block the enemy's path. Guard the defenses. Road intersection terrain. Join hands with allies. Consolidate alliances. Serious, collect spoils. Ensure a continuous flow of supplies. Difficult, keep steady on the march. Keep advancing. Confined, encircled. Resort to stratagems. Block avenues of retreat. Desperate, fight. Proclaim the impossibility of saving lives. In hostile territory, penetrating deeply brings cohesion, while penetrating too little causes dispersion. Speed is the essence of war. Throwing soldiers into positions of no escape leads them to prefer death to flight and to fight with maximum force. The skill of a skilled general is to lead his army as one man. He must be quiet, secrecy, honest and fair, order. He must deceive his men and the enemy, changing arrangements and routes to keep them in ignorance. Placing the army in mortal danger can lead to its survival and victory. The use of spies is vital. Knowledge of the enemy's dispositions can only be obtained from other men. There are 5 classes of spies: local spies, inhabitants of the district, internal spies, officers of the enemy, converted spies, enemy spies captured and used for our purposes, convicted spies, used to carry false news to the enemy, surviving spies, bring news from the enemy camp. The secret system of espionage in action is called divine manipulation of the wires, and is the sovereign's most precious faculty. The closest relations, generous rewards, and utmost secrecy must be maintained with spies. The usefulness of spies requires sagacity and benevolence and frankness in managing them. Knowledge of the enemy, the basis of espionage, derives primarily from the converted spy. The use of spies is crucial to the ability of an army to move. Fire attack. There are 5 ways to attack with fire: burning camps, supplies, baggage trains, arsenals, depots, and setting fire to the enemy. One must have the means and materials ready. There are appropriate times and days for the fire attack, depending on the dry climate and the constellations that indicate wind. The general must be prepared for 5 possible developments when using fire, such as attacking from outside when there is fire inside, or biding his time. Using fire shows intelligence. The enlightened ruler plans ahead, and the good general cultivates his resources. No one should act out of personal anger or irritation, but only if there is an advantage and the position is critical. Anger and irritation pass, but a kingdom destroyed, and the dead cannot be recovered. Caution is essential to keep the country at peace and the army intact. Detailed analysis of Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Let us analyze the main themes, ideas, and facts presented in the excerpts provided from Sun Tzu's The Art of War, an ancient and influential Chinese military treatise. Introduction and historical context. Sun Tzu is described as a Chinese military general, strategist, philosopher, and writer, traditionally credited as the author of The Art of War. He lived during the Eastern Zhou period, 771–256 BC, possibly between 544 and 496 BC as a minister to King Helu of Wu, although the exact historicity is uncertain and debated by modern scholars, who tend to date the extant text to the Warring States period, 475–221 BC. The work is recognized as having influenced military philosophy and thought in both the West and East Asia, with its popularity and practical application growing globally in the 20th century. A remarkable story from Sima Qian illustrates Sun Tzu's rigor in training troops, even to the point of executing the king's favorite concubines to ensure obedience and discipline. The essence of war and planning. Sun Tzu begins by stating that the art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a path to safety or ruin. This highlights the seriousness and need for in-depth study of warfare. He lays out 5 constant factors that must be considered in military planning. The moral law, the unity between the ruler and the people, ensuring that the people follow their leader without fear of danger. The heaven refers to the climate, seasons, and weather. The land encompasses distance, terrain, open or narrow, danger, and security. The commander represents the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and rigor, method and discipline. The organization of the army, hierarchies, logistics, supply roads, and control of expenditure. Victory or defeat is predicted based on the comparison of these 5 factors between the opposing sides. Sun Tzu emphasizes the importance of prior calculation. Now the general who wins a battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses a battle makes few calculations beforehand. The economics of war. War is an expensive enterprise. Sun Tzu details the costs of mobilizing an army and sustaining a campaign. Protracted wars are seen as detrimental. There is no instance of a country ever benefiting from a prolonged war. Delay depletes the resources of the state and the morale of the troops. The skill of a general lies in conducting war profitably, which includes the ability to plunder the enemy's food to sustain one's own forces. The poverty of the public treasury due to remote contributions impoverishes the people, while the proximity of the army drives up prices. Attack by strategy and victory without fighting. The supreme goal in the art of war is not to fight and win every battle, but rather to break the enemy's resistance without fighting. The highest form of command is to frustrate the enemy's plans. The next best is to prevent the enemy from uniting. The next best is to attack the enemy army in the field, and the worst is to besiege walled cities. Sun Tzu gives numerical guidelines for attack. Surround the enemy with 10 times the force. Attack with 5 times the force. Divide the army with twice the number. If equal in numbers, fight. If outnumbered, avoid the enemy. If very unequal, flee. The general is the bulwark of the state. A complete bulwark strengthens the state. A defective bulwark weakens it. A ruler can bring misfortune to the army in 3 ways: by giving unrealistic orders, by governing the army like a kingdom without understanding its conditions, and by employing officers without considering their abilities and the circumstances. The 5 essentials for victory are knowing when to fight and when not to fight, knowing how to deal with superior and inferior forces, having an army of the same spirit, being prepared to face an unsuspecting enemy, and having military capability without interference from the sovereign. The famous saying sums up the importance of knowledge. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Tactical dispositions and the importance of adaptability. Good fighters of the past ensured the impossibility of being defeated before seeking an opportunity to defeat the enemy. Excellence lies not in winning easily, but in winning without making mistakes, conquering an enemy who is already at a disadvantage. The victorious strategist seeks battle only after victory has been assured. The accomplished leader cultivates the moral law and follows method and discipline to control success. Military. Method involves measurement, estimation of quantity, calculation, balancing of chances, and victory. Military tactics are compared to water, which molds itself to the terrain. Likewise, the soldier must adapt his tactics to the enemy and the circumstances, for, in war, there are no constant conditions. The ability to modify tactics according to the opponent is the mark of a heaven-born captain. Energy and the use of direct and indirect. Controlling a large force is similar to controlling a few men, being a matter of dividing numbers and using signals. The ability of an army to withstand the impact of the enemy comes from the combination of direct and indirect maneuvers. The science of weaknesses and strengths allows the army's impact to be devastating. Indirect tactics, when applied efficiently, are seen as inexhaustible and essential to ensure victory. They are compared to combinations of musical notes, colors, and flavors which, from a few basic elements, generate an infinite number of variations. The direct and indirect interconnect and alternate, like walking in circles. The quality of the decision is compared to the flight of a falcon, allowing a quick and destructive attack. The intelligent fighter seeks combined energy and does not demand much from isolated individuals. The energy developed by good warriors is compared to the momentum of a stone rolling down a mountain. Weaknesses and strengths. Being the first on the field and waiting for the enemy ensures preparation, while arriving late results in exhaustion. The intelligent fighter imposes his will on the enemy, instead of having the enemy's will imposed on him. The enemy can be lured by offering advantages or prevented from approaching by inflicting damage. The army must attack where the enemy is not prepared and appear where it is not expected. Success in attack is assured by attacking only undefended places, and security in defense is assured by holding positions that cannot be attacked. Subtlety and secrecy enable the army to be invisible and inaudible, holding the fate of the enemy in its hands. Discovering the enemy's dispositions while remaining invisible allows one to concentrate one's own forces while dividing those of the enemy. Weakness in numbers arises from the need to prepare against possible attacks, while strength in numbers arises from forcing the opponent to make such preparations. Swiftness must be like the wind, compactness like the forest, plunder like fire, and immobility like a mountain. Plans must be impenetrable as night, and movement like lightning. Knowing the place and time of battle allows concentration, while ignorance leads to dispersion. Sun Tzu emphasizes that even with superior numbers, Victory is not assured unless the enemy can be prevented from fighting by planning and revealing his weak points. Winning tactics should not be repeated, but rather adapted to changing circumstances. Maneuvers and terrain. Maneuvering with a disciplined army is advantageous, but with an undisciplined crowd it is dangerous. Forced marches to gain an advantage can lead to exhaustion and loss of troops. An army without baggage, supplies, or supply bases is lost. It is essential to know the designs of neighbors in order to form alliances. It is necessary to be familiar with the terrain, to lead an army, and to take advantage of natural advantages. Deception and movement based on advantage are crucial. Gongs, drums, banners, and flags are essential tools to focus the army's attention and maintain unity. A soldier's spirit varies throughout the day. A shrewd general exploits this. Discipline and calm are essential to await the enemy's disorder. To refrain from attacking an enemy who is well-ordered or in confident formation is an art. To punish soldiers before they are attached to the general renders them useless. To withhold punishment when attached also renders them useless. To treat soldiers humanely, but to maintain discipline with rigor, leads to victory. Variation of tactics and the will of the sovereign. The general receives orders from the sovereign, but must be able to vary his tactics according to circumstances. There are situations in which the sovereign's orders should not be obeyed, if they are detrimental to victory. The general who understands variation of tactics knows how to deal with his troops. Consideration of advantage and disadvantage must be mixed in planning. Reducing hostile leaders, causing trouble, and offering deceptive baits are tactics to keep the enemy occupied and vulnerable. The art of war teaches one to rely on one's own readiness, not on the enemy's inaction. The army on the march and observation of the enemy, positioning in different terrains, mountains, rivers, swamps, plains, requires specific tactics. High and sunny terrain is preferable. It is crucial to observe the enemy's signals to understand his intentions and state, formation, morale, supplies, exhaustion, discontent. Signals such as movement of light, chariots, peace proposals without pact, running and organizing in ranks, advance and retreat, soldiers leaning on spears, thirst, flocking birds, night clamor, disturbances in camp, fluttering flags, angry officers, slaughter of cattle, lack of pots on fires, whisperings, and frequent punishments indicate the enemy's state. Starting with arrogance and then becoming frightened shows a lack of intelligence. Treating enemy spies well to convert them into spies is a cunning tactic. A general shows confidence in his men, but insists on obedience to orders for mutual benefit. Terrain and calamities. 6 types of terrain are identified: accessible, tangled, temporary, narrow passes, steep heights, and great distance from the enemy, each requiring a different tactical approach. 6 calamities that can affect an army: flight, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, and defeat, are the result of the general's failures. The natural formation of the country is an ally, but the ability to assess the enemy and calculate risks is the test of a great general. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to serve his country, is the jewel of the kingdom. Treating soldiers as sons leads to loyalty and courage, but being indulgent without imposing authority makes them useless. Success depends on knowledge of both one's own conditions and the enemy's, as well as of heaven and earth, the 9 situations. And speed. 9 varieties of terrain: dispersed, easy, contentious, open, road crossing, serious, difficult, confined, desperate, are described, each with recommended tactics. Speed is the essence of war. One must take advantage of the enemy's lack of preparation, use unexpected routes, and attack unguarded points. Penetrating deep into hostile territory increases the cohesion of the troops. It is crucial to care for the well-being of the men, to concentrate energy and accumulate strength. Keeping the army constantly on the move with unfathomable plans. Placing soldiers in desperate positions makes them fight hard. The ability of an army to imitate the shuaijian, a snake that strikes where it is struck, demonstrates the ability to adapt and fight in unison. Managing an army involves setting a standard of courage and using the ground properly. The general must be quiet to ensure secrecy and fair to maintain order. He must be able to deceive his own officers and men to keep the enemy in ignorance. Placing the army in mortal danger may lead to its survival and escape to safety. Success in war is achieved by carefully adapting to the enemy's purposes. War is expensive, and ignorance of the enemy is the height of inhumanity. At the critical moment, the leader must act decisively, preventing the retreat of the men and forcing them to face the danger. The measures appropriate to the 9 varieties of terrain, the tactics of aggression or defense, and the fundamental laws of human nature must be studied. In invading hostile territory, penetrating deeply brings cohesion, while penetrating shallowly leads to dispersion. In desperate terrain, the impossibility of saving one's life must be proclaimed to the soldiers, so that they fight with all their energy. The fire attack. 5 ways of using fire in attack are described: burning soldiers in camps, supplies, baggage trains, arsenals, and setting fire to the enemy. The use of fire demonstrates intelligence, while the use of water increases strength. Unhappy is the fate of those who attempt to win battles without cultivating the spirit of enterprise. The enlightened ruler plans in advance, and the good general cultivates his resources. The movement of troops should be based on advantage, not on anger or irritation. The use of spies. Foreknowledge, or knowledge of the enemy's dispositions, can only be obtained from other men, that is, through the use of spies. 5 classes of spies are described: locals, inmates, converts, convicts, and survivors. The use of spies is described as the divine manipulation of the strings, the sovereign's most precious faculty. Secrecy is crucial in the use of spies, and converted spies are essential for acquiring information and employing other classes of spies. The converted spy should be treated with great liberality. The rise of ancient dynasties is attributed to the use of spies. Only the enlightened ruler and the wise general will use the highest intelligence for espionage purposes, achieving great results. Spies are a very important element in warfare, and the ability of an army to move depends on them. Sun Tzu's book, The Art of War, emphasizes the importance of meticulous planning, thorough knowledge of the enemy and of oneself, adaptability to changing circumstances of terrain and enemy, discipline and morale of the troops, the economy of war, and the strategic use of deception and intelligence, including the use of spies. The work emphasizes that ideal victory is achieved without direct combat, through strategic manipulation and exploitation of the enemy's weaknesses. The work, The Art of War, has been praised and used throughout East Asian military history and gained global attention in the 20th century, finding practical application in the Western world as well.
The Virtual Books Publishing Team thanks for your visit. If you liked our channel, please subscribe and share.